Hi guys, welcome to episode 4 of the Super Dope Book Club. I'm Sebastian.
And I'm MK.
All right. So this is episode 4 again. We're gonna go over chapters 5 and 6. I really hope that everybody's enjoying our podcast so far, and thank you so much for everybody that is supporting us and is actually taking the time to look over the video and actually read and learn about things with us because we really are enjoying ourselves.
All the likes, all the messages, all the comments, all the feedback we have gotten has been so fulfilling for us because we've been putting so much work into this, and at first we didn't really care. We were like, oh, whatever, this is for us, and it still is, but the feedback is really nice. Like, we're really loving that people are paying attention, and it's actually starting some of our friends to read. A bunch of my friends will send me pictures sometimes, and it'll be a picture of them with their new book that they just got in the mail. I'm just saying, you guys are giving me life right now, so thank you so much.
Yeah, we're really appreciating him. One of the examples of our friends that is really pushing forward with this whole thing is our friend Jake. He's living in California. He even messaged us and he said that as soon as he saw, I think it was either the first or second episode, he just got up and just picked up a book and started working out. And that itself is very fulfilling for us.
Yeah, like, we just want to help make a difference. Even the teeniest little difference, like getting a few more words into your brain, like, I'm really proud of that. So thanks so much for sticking with us, and let's go into it, and hope you keep watching, listening.
Let's do this. All right, chapter 5.
Evolve or die. Look around you. Everything changes. Everything on this earth is in a continuous state of evolving. You were not put on this earth to remain stagnant. Steve Maraboli. So, in 1974, David Falk was a student at George Washington University Law School. He got it in his mind that he wanted to work at ProServe. It was a small sports agency that mostly represented pro tennis players. For months, he called the ProServe offices trying to get a meeting, and one day he even called 17 times during a 3-hour period. Finally, they took the call, and Falk talked his way into an unpaid internship. This man is a big deal because he represented Michael Jordan. He pitched Nike on a deal that centered on Michael Jordan being the face of his own Nike lifestyle brand. Players typically only got flat endorsement fee, but Falk demanded that Jordan receive royalties on all Air Jordan sneakers sold. Now, at first, Nike didn't really believe in Michael Jordan because they didn't think that the country was ready to put their support in a black athlete yet. So after Falk was determined to get them to sign, they decided that they would sign, but if Nike didn't sell $4 million worth of Air Jordans in the first 3 years, they could walk away from the contract. Nike ended up selling $70 million worth of Air Jordans in the first 2 months after the line launched in 1985. So this whole thing is about evolving, and Falk saw that there was a need in the community to push towards the NBA. He knew it was going to become big. He knew it was something, and no one was paying attention. So while everybody was out courting all these tennis players, which was huge in the 90s, he was like, no, I see a market and I'm going to push for it. And everyone was looking at him like he was crazy. I mean, Nike obviously didn't believe in them, and Air Jordans are one of the most popular brands on earth. I learned through this, however, that originally Michael Jordan liked Adidas.
Yeah, he did. The biggest takeaway out of the whole story I really enjoyed was the equity part. He was more focused on getting those royalties and basically thinking long term rather than thinking about like a $1 million deal that will make him happy and his client happy and everybody happy kind of thing, and then that's it. No, he really wanted to look long term and actually think about his own personal future and also his client's future and basically make a bigger move.
He ended up changing the way the entire sports community sells.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only that, but he kind of like made a whole paradigm shift in the whole industry itself as well, which was really impressive. I mean, if he hadn't pushed in what he believed, and we might not even have known of Michael Jordan or even of Air Jordans or like nothing like that. Imagine that itself.
And it was all because he was adamant that he knew Michael Jordan and the NBA were an untapped market that America was ready to take on. So 50 Cent goes on to say, and more than anything, it was his ability to evolve beyond whatever sorts of roles and expectations had been assigned to him and create a new model to support his client. And I love that because people try and put us in these little boxes. I mean, there's all these stereotypes when we're growing up, and we have all these expectations, and really just taking the reins for yourself and going ahead and making your own destiny. Like, that's what it's all about. And this guy went ahead and did it when people thought he was being crazy. And now Air Jordans, like, they're the biggest lifestyle brand on earth.
Yeah, really, he was just thinking outside the box. Just like you said, like people try to put us like into this little tiny box that kind of makes us think on like one way only. He refused to do that. He just wanted to think outside of that box and say, you know what? There's a different way to do this, to go about this. And all he had to do was believe in himself, and he did.
And it worked out so well. And then he goes on to say, conversely, people who get too comfortable or unwilling to adapt are usually the ones who get left behind. So that's why this chapter is evolve or die. If you get stuck in your ways, you're not going to succeed. You're not going to be able to create any new big ideas. No one's going to take you as seriously as you'd like if you're stuck in the Stone Age. You know what I mean? And everything's changing rapidly nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about adaptation, resilience, really trying to make that brain work and grind those gears in one way or the other rather than staying stagnant.
Yep, and he wants you to pay attention to the culture. Expanding with your culture is so important as well. He said, I'm not interested in excuses. What I'm interested in is analyzing information and coming to conclusions.
Which goes to say, to what he was saying back in the early chapters, where whenever it came to deals, he doesn't like to include his emotions. And this is one way to say it, is that he's interested in analyzing information and coming to conclusions, meaning that he doesn't put his emotions into any deals that he's in or anything like that. He just wants to be very practical all the time.
And because of that, he knew that he was put into this little tiny box as a rapper. He was supposed to be a rapper. And he decided he's a close observer of our culture, and he recognized that his own career had fit into an unmistakable pattern. Hip-hop loves things that are damaged. Well, he had gotten to a point in his career where he was no longer damaged. He had made it. He was successful. And people weren't paying attention anymore because, I mean, how are they going to take him seriously? He's a millionaire.
Yeah, it's like they couldn't relate to him anymore. Like, yeah, he did it, so he's like way above us now, so to speak. So why would we kind of support you?
Yeah, so he decided he could write a great song, like a banger. Like, he knows it's going to be a success, and first he'd want to hand it down to someone younger because he knows they'd be able to work it better. And he's trying to figure out who's going to be the next person to be the next 50 Cent. Not necessarily like him, but another big person. He said the last one was Tekashi, but Tekashi also ruined that. So he said, or maybe even it'll be a young girl, because nowadays female rappers like Nicki Minaj and Cardi B are going out of their way to let you know that they're just as damaged as the guys are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he's realizing that in the public's mind, once you make it, you're fixed. It's time to move on to the next one in hip-hop, because you made it, so there's nothing damaged about you anymore. You're fixed. And no matter, so in order to get over that and succeed and overcome the fact that people are over him, he said no matter what you do, you have to be able to accept that your role is going to change.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, right after that, he writes this whole statement, which I really like. He says, then you work a few years and start to get comfortable. You start to develop habits. If you're good, you might make your company some money. Maybe even a lot of it. Then you'll start to think that the company owes you. Not only for what they're paying you in the moment, but for all you've done for them in the past too. Maybe you start to take your foot off the gas a bit and begin to believe that your track record will secure your spot forever.
And like in that case, people don't realize like, yeah, you might have done a bunch for us in the first 10 years you worked for us, but you've been here 20 years.
Yeah, and honestly, like I'm thinking this very seriously because that's sort of like the mentality that I had at one point, and honestly, that's basically like the average Joe's thoughts, and it shouldn't be like that at all whatsoever. Because I mean, if you're in a company, you're there for a reason. You're there to do a job, right? Like the company doesn't really owe you anything because at the end of the day, from day one, you asked to work for them. So that means that you're willing to give them your services for their their money. So like you've already agreed upon this from day one, but then eventually you get to a point where you're working there 2, 3, 4, 5 years in a company, and then you get so comfortable that eventually you start thinking like, hey, they owe me because I'm putting so much time. But at the end of the day, they're still paying you, which is what you agreed upon in the first place. Yes, I agree that sometimes you have to get your I guess values worth. So like for the people that are putting in quite a bit of work and then eventually the company doesn't want to give them a raise, like I get it. I really do.
You should be recognized for if you are working hard. Yes, you should have. There should be a recognition of the fact that you are doing well, but it doesn't mean that you're entitled to anything.
Yeah, you're not entitled to anything at all whatsoever because I mean, as long as you're an employee, you're just easily replaceable to that company. I mean, you're just an employee.
And that's when he goes on to say the same change that brought you in the door can sweep you right back out if you don't keep pushing yourself forward. No matter how many promotions you've received or corner offices you've moved into, or even how many times you've seen your name in the headlines, you can never settle. You have to keep finding new ways to challenge yourself.
Right. Keep the brain working, keep the gears grinding, and just keep pushing forward. Just keep making yourself new goals and like not staying stagnant because that's what that statement was saying. That's for the people that want to stay stagnant and just want everything handed out to them.
And so 50 Cent looks to a guy named Ray Dalio who runs Bridgewater Associates, one of the largest hedge funds in the world. His personal worth is around $18 billion. That is such a ridiculous amount of money. He knows a thing or two about what motivates continued success. Here are his thoughts on the importance of personal evolution. Once we get the things we're striving for, we rarely remain satisfied with them. The things are just the bait. Chasing after them forces us to evolve, and it is the evolution and not the rewards themselves that matter to us and to those around us. This means that for most people, success is struggling and evolving as effectively as possible. So always struggling, always evolving, never like yes, as you finally attain your dream, you don't just be like, oh, I did it. You find a new dream and you just keep going.
Yeah, and I love it. And I don't want to say that I know a lot about Ray Dalio. I don't, but I know of him. He's a very good businessman, entrepreneur, and I know that he says this from the bottom of his heart because he has gone through so much in his entire life that and experience that I know what he means. He doesn't want people to stay comfortable at all whatsoever. He wants people to like kind of like push on forward every single time. Yes, you achieve this goal. Okay, what else is out there? What's next? Because once, just like he said, once we get the things that we're striving for, we rarely remain satisfied with them. Yeah, okay, so I made $1,000, and then after I make that $1,000, then what happens? I probably want $10,000. When I get $10,000, I'll probably want $100,000. Like it just never stops. One of the greatest actors out there, I think, is Matthew McConaughey. He
my baby. Oh.
The way he thinks is just like Ray Dalio, but he does it for acting. I think one time he was asked, who is your greatest hero? And he really had to sit down and think about it. And then he came back to that person and he said, you know what? I think it's me in 10 years. And then 10 years went by, and then that same person asked him again, so are you your hero now? And he says, no, not even close. So the other guy asked him again, hey, who's your hero then? Well, it's probably going to have to be me in 10 years then. So once again, 10 years went by, and that same person asked him again, so are you your hero now? He was like, you know what, man? You're not going to believe this. Not even close either. It just kind of it kind of goes to show you that he only wants to think of himself as the person that can achieve anything, but he knows that even though he achieves that next person being himself can achieve even something greater. So that's basically what Ray Dalio was saying, and what 50 Cent is getting to it, that at the end of the day, whenever you make yourself goals, yes, you complete them, but you're not gonna be completely satisfied in the fact, like, yes, you might tell yourself, good job, Sebastian, you did this, you completed that task, that's amazing, but what else is next? Because at the end of the day, it's not like the day stops or the year stops or the century stops. Life just keeps on going, and you always try to find exciting things that excite you, right?
Yeah. So I actually went stagnant for a long time. I graduated college, and then I met Sebastian, and then we moved to Florida, and I've always been a creative person. I'm a creator. I'm an artist. My degree was in acting. I love music and being on the radio, and that's what I was doing. I was on the radio right before we moved to Florida, and then I went somewhere, and we didn't know anyone, and we were trying to build a life, and then next thing I know, it had been a year and a half, and I hadn't made a single piece of art or done anything towards any of my careers, and I had just gotten comfortable, and I wasn't pushing myself anymore, and then I started to get sad, and I couldn't figure out why, and it was because I just stopped. I was like, oh, I graduated college. Like, that was my thing. That was what I wanted to do. I wanted to graduate, and I did it, and then I was like, okay, well, this is fine, until it wasn't fine. And ever since then, I've been trying and pushing and making art and starting new projects, hence this podcast, and trying to do things and elevate myself, because not only is it going to help me in my future, but it is helping me in my mental health as well. Because going stagnant can also bring you so far down in your mentality. It's where depression comes from.
Yeah, no, I completely understand, and I think we sort of stay stagnant together, and I'm sort of happy it happened though, because at the end of the day, it comes to really show us what the dangers of it.
Yeah, because
Right.
we figured them out together. We weren't pushing each other, and we were just allowing ourselves to just be, and neither of us were happy that way. And then once we started pushing each other and encouraging each other to follow what we cared about and doing our passions, not only are we both much happier, but our relationship is that much stronger too.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, it doesn't have to be like a long period of time of stagnation. Is that a word?
I don't know if that's
Of
you don't have to plateau
Yeah,
for very long.
right.
There you go. It's called
Like,
a plateau.
sometimes it can happen to other individuals, like every once in a while, like daily, you know what I mean? Or like sometimes it's like a week of just like pure slack, you know? Like it hits people in different ways.
And it's okay to take some time, because we need it to grow. Like, you can't just keep going and going and going, you'll burn out. But I'm not saying like take a month or two off either.
Yeah, I mean,
Or, well, a month or two maybe.
yeah, it depends
Travel.
on the situation, on what you're doing, but like at the end of the day, like if you feel like you're just not learning, you're just sitting still, like being stagnant, like kind of like you just know that you're not learning, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, the brain likes to learn, it likes to keep itself occupied, you know what I mean? It's like another muscle. It just likes to move around, do its thing, be stretched out and be used, and everything.
And in doing that, you find a way to evolve. Like, growing and evolution go hand in hand. So in that, we get to where he says one of his headers is refusing to evolve. He said, if the success of power was one of the greatest accomplishments, then one of my biggest disappointments is the unfulfilled potential of Lloyd Banks and Tony Yayo. Yayo? Is it Yayo?
I think so.
Yayo of G Unit. So he says, I believe a true star must possess 4 fundamental abilities: to create great material, to be a high energy live performer, have unique appearance, and possess a strong personality. He said Tupac had all 4. Biggie didn't have all of them, but he was able to compensate in the areas where he was weaker. Lloyd Banks possesses maybe one of those qualities. He's a very good lyricist. But other than that, he didn't really have anything else. And he didn't really do anything else to make his star power any better. By the time Instagram rolled around, people were already forgetting about him. And 50 was like, you gotta get on Instagram. And he said, nah, I don't want to do it. Nah, that's corny. Biggie and Pop didn't do that shit. And he was like, they're dead, my man. And he said, but Banks was adamant. Biggie and Pac didn't do social media, so he wasn't going to do it either. If you don't do social media, no one's going to know who you are. Social media is our world now.
Yeah.
It is what we are. No one would know to watch this video if it wasn't for social media. This video wouldn't exist. Like, people are making their entire livings off of social media, but this rapper who is not making headlines doesn't even want to make an Instagram because Tupac and Biggie didn't have them in the 90s.
Yeah, right. And he's probably kicking himself right now.
Especially reading it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're in 2020. This is way long ago. So, I mean, yes, I understand that back then, like, he probably was hesitant because he was just like, man, this is probably not even popular. Like, why do I even have to do that? But right now, he's probably like, man, I really messed up because the giant opportunity that he missed.
50 Cent even said when Instagram first came out, he was not interested in it at all. He thought it was absolutely ridiculous. And then he slowly got to get on it. And now he said Instagram is like the center of his power because he is one of the only people he knows that runs his own Instagram account. And he is constantly on it. And he attributes it to some of his success because of how many followers he has, which I don't remember, but it's an insane amount of people. So he says if you're open to new experiences and willing to take chances and curious about new topics, you're young. Period. Being stagnant ages you, is what he's saying. Like, literally, it ages your mentality. On the other hand, if you're set in your ways and aren't interested in trying new things or think you've already learned all there is to know, then you're old. In fact, you're dying.
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, what he's saying is, like, never try to be the smartest guy in the room. There's always room for improvement, always room for learning new things. Like, even if you think you know everything, at the end of the day, there's somebody else out there that might know a different, something else, like a different perspective that you didn't know. You were probably not thinking one way and somebody else might think a different way, and just they open your eyes and you're like, man, I didn't even see things that way.
Yep.
Learn something new.
And then he goes on to talk about Yayo, because Yayo, when he first, when 50 did Get Rich or Die Trying, he released it, Yayo was actually in prison. No one knew who he was. He was no one. And as soon as he got out, because him and 50 Cent were boys, he brought him straight on tour and put him right on stage and he had a bunch of money all of a sudden. And his problems were not that he didn't have the star power like Lloyd. Instead, his problems were that he was too much of a wild card. He didn't evolve in any way. He got stuck in the same mindset. And 50 said, I learned that when things are moving very fast and you're constantly being put in new situations and environments, most people tend to lean back into their old habits and not develop new ones.
Yes.
So Yayo gets out of jail, and then all of a sudden he goes from jail to having so much money and being on the road and everyone knowing his name and having groupies and partying all the time. And instead of growing and like keeping himself out of trouble, he would do things like, hey, let's take this money and flip it. And like buy Coke and like flip that and we'll have even more money and let's go crazy. And 50 Cent was like, we don't need to do that, man. We're on a tour, a super mega money tour.
Right. It's like 50 Cent kind of like rewarded a baby that misbehaved.
Yeah, and then because of that, he ended up stuck in his ways, and he was never able to meet his full potential.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he got arrested for doing something bad, came out of jail, immediately 50 gives him just about everything that a human being would want. Fame, money, all the things that you could possibly need. As if like, hey man, welcome back, we missed you, but here's a giant reward.
You didn't earn,
yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that 50 sees that was a big mistake. And
yeah, he does. He's like, it was a mistake. I encouraged him to stay the same almost. So then the next heading is the writing is never on the wall, and it goes on to talk about the Old Testament, a Babylonian king named Belshazzar. I always have trouble saying that word, but I think his name is Belshazzar. And basically, he always had orgies and he had a harem and he was a wild king. And he got to a point where he went to a sacred temple and he threw an orgy at the temple. And in his drunken stupor, he says he saw a ghost hand write words on the wall, and he got them translated. And basically, it said, "You've messed up. Your kingdom's gonna fall tonight, and you're gonna die." And then he did. And the whole point of that is he's saying the writing is never actually on the wall. In this case, it literally was on the wall, and he went back to partying until he died. But he's saying it's never on the wall, even if it is, like, pay attention to what's going on around you, because you might not ever be able to read the writing on the wall, but what you can read is the energy around you. And pay attention to how other people are receiving you and the vibe you are getting. So that is a huge part in business, especially. He said, I read the energy in the buildings. I take control of my own future, and I always have a better plan than waiting for the writing on the wall to appear. So, always have a backup. If it doesn't if there's not, something's not going your way, or if everything's going perfect, you never know when something could go wrong. You should just always have something in your pocket that you're thinking about. And one of the ways you could have something in your back pocket is by expanding your mind through your circle. He then goes to talk about how one of his favorite new friends that he's made in his life is Robert Greene. He was the co-author of 50 Cent's book, The 50th Law. Robert's definitely not the type of person who would have been in my previous circles. He's a middle-aged white guy, and there's nothing street about him at all. He's a real history buff, someone who is happiest when he's reading and studying. He said before he became friends with him, he'd never been too interested in subjects that didn't directly involve him. His attitude was, how could something that happened in ancient Rome or Imperial China have any significance in my life? But then the stories that Robert told him made him realize that he was being very close-minded. In America, you and I aren't supposed to be friends. People want there to be walks between... Stop it. I really fucked that up.
That's fine. That's cool. I mean, we're only
1 minute in.
I'll delete it.
Yes, you are. Thank you.
It's no problem. It's cool.
It was going really well, and then I got lost in here. I forgot. I usually outline it better for myself. Robert said this to him.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's so important.
Yeah, exactly.
Here. After I said closed-minded, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that would be easier for me.
Of course.
Because I just liked this, but I wanted... It was because you...
Right. Okay. So yes, go with what you were talking about, and then I'll chime in with this part, and then
yeah, I'm literally gonna stop at close-minded. That's literally where I'm gonna stop, and you're gonna start.
The story Robert told me made me realize I was being very close-minded, and then I'll jump right in, and then once I'm done talking about like a story, a slightly very short story of something being predetermined, then I'll slightly, once I'm done with that, then we can jump into the next thing that's...
This is when you learn about meditation.
Mm-hmm. Where we can jump right into meditation, which obviously we have a lot.
A lot. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Can I say something real quick? Cause and then that whole 2 pages is meditation. And this is still about you must find people who are going to inject new energy into your life. Oh. Okay. I'm good.
Okay. And 3, 2, 1.
And one of the ways to keep something in your back pocket is making new friends. The next header is expanding your mind through your circle. He says in the last 15 years he's made a lot of new friends. A lot of friends that he would have never made back on the streets before he was 50 Cent. And one of his favorite new friends is Robert Greene, the co-author of his book, The 50th Law. Robert is not the type of person who would have been in my previous circles, he says. He's a middle-aged white guy, and there's nothing street about him at all. He's a real history buff, someone who's happiest when he's reading and studying. Before becoming friends with Robert, I'd never been too interested in subjects I thought didn't directly involve me. My attitude was, how could something that happened in ancient Rome or Imperial China have any significance for my life? But then the stories Robert told me made me realize that I was being very close-minded.
Yeah, and Robert even told 50 Cent at one point, you know, in America, you and I aren't supposed to be friends. People want there to be walls between us because we supposedly come from different worlds. History and hip hop aren't supposed to meet. Why not? We both got a lot to learn from each other. Our friendship is a way to break down those walls. And it basically comes to show you that our lives are not really predetermined. Like, it was really easy for a lot of people probably like that really know each and one of them to be like, 50 only should probably like hang out around like rappers or like thugs or that type of thing. And the friends from Robert are probably thinking like, Robert, you probably should be only hanging out with authors and people that are very, very intelligent, professors, people that dress well, blah, 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 so to speak, kind of thing. Like, and that really doesn't make sense, because at the end of the day, you really look at both of these men, and they are both smart individuals, and they love just kind of like pushing forward. So you have two individuals that kind of like vibe with each other. So why would that not be okay?
Yeah. And with that, he then expanded his mind and started to read and started to learn about history and started to take things he had learned and adapt them into his business deals, which was so interesting to me. And so that's just another way of expanding your circle and expanding your mind that way, is through the friendships you make.
Yeah, absolutely. You learn a whole lot of perspective from other individuals that are probably smarter than you, or might be the same smart. And it's like, it really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you are just trying to learn something else from somebody else. Like, maybe they're looking at stuff a different way, or maybe they know something that you don't know. Like, it's all about learning, right?
And open-mindedness to take in that knowledge. So then we get to open-mindedness, and 50 Cent talks about another unlikely friend that he has made, and his name is Deepak Chopra. He's the best-selling author and wellness expert. If Robert Greene is something like my teacher when it comes to history, Deepak is my spiritual teacher. One of the most valuable things he's taught me is the importance of getting my head in a more conscious and relaxed space. The best way to ensure I stay mentally sharp is to actually give my mind a breather. And the technique he taught him to take that break was meditation. Different types of meditation you can practice. There are many of them, but the one he recommended is a mantra-based technique where you take a mantra, you say it over and over again, and that's how you meditate and keep your mind clear.
Yeah, and don't quote me on this, but I'm almost pretty positive that Ray Dalio is one of those individuals that really likes the mantra meditation as well. How do I know this? Because I really like meditating. I wake up every single morning, and that's part of my routine. It's meditating for 10 to 15 minutes. Sometimes I do it twice a day. Sometimes maybe 3 times, but at least once a day. It's very important, because just like 50 says, it keeps him very level-headed. So why does he need level-headedness? I mean, he's literally about to go into business for the rest of the day, or he's gonna go and work out, and he's gonna do a whole bunch of things. So basically, his brain's gonna be everywhere. So
his life is constantly moving. Everything's going so fast. He gets to a point where he's thinking all these thoughts. He has all these projects he wants to do, and like, that's a lot in anyone's head.
It really is. And even whenever he's meditating, he goes to say that sometimes he can't even meditate properly because all these thoughts are just racing and racing and racing. And then it comes to a point where basically he has to say the words I am over and over and over again, which is basically part of the meditation.
Mantra.
The mantra meditation is mantra, meaning say like you say a word over and over and over,
or a phrase,
something that will keep your mind off of things.
And he says, when I'm done meditating, I feel much more clear in my thoughts and my decision-making process. So, like, after meditating, he feels more centered. He is able to go in with a clear head and make a decision. So, whenever life gets too crazy, he actually has even made a room in his house dedicated to his meditation. So, when things get crazy, he just goes in there for 15 to 20 minutes, and he says it changes everything for him.
Yeah, it keeps him in a total state of equanimity. Thus meaning that whenever shit hits the fan in his life, or like something that he doesn't like goes on in his life, all he has to do is just go and meditate, and he just brings in level-headed, takes out his emotions completely out of it again, and just thinks practical and kind of like finds out on what to do, and then goes about it then.
And that is a constant theme for him in this book. He, every time he gets too emotional, he takes himself back to this practical, logical place, because at his core, that's what he is. He's just a very practical, smart dude. And, like, so even he is able to take his emotions completely out of it by sitting in a room for 15 minutes and saying, I am. And his favorite place to meditate is actually on an airplane.
Yeah, which I found really interesting.
Wild.
I mean, I have done it, but just because that's his favorite place, that's the odd part. I guess because he's always moving around, doing different things. I guess whenever he's in the plane, he finally finds his like little home. Like,
I don't get it at all.
I just don't really get it at all. Why that's his favorite spot, but I mean, whatever works for the individual.
Because
I mean,
I've meditated. I also have been meditating. I try to meditate every morning. I'm not going to say Sebastian's amazing at it. Like, he's faithful to it because he is consistent. I have consistency issues. I am working on them very hard. But after I do meditate, I do come out with a clear head. And last year we went to Asia together, and there was one of our flights that was like 19 hours long. It was crazy. And there was a point where I tried to meditate on the plane. I could not do it. It was impossible for me. I don't understand how you could be. Well, you know what? 50 cents in first class.
I guess that is a
50 cents in first class. You know what? I get it. I bet he's like comfy as hell. He just kicked back, eyes closed. I am. I am.
I mean, yeah, that is pretty relaxing. So I guess I'll find out how that is eventually.
We'll be there. We'll get there. First class is coming our way.
Probably will become my favorite spot to meditate to.
Because, like, if you're meditating, like, your first class, those flight attendants aren't bothering you unless you want to be bothered.
No, not at all.
So he says, you must find people who are going to inject a new energy into your life in order to grow. And that is what he did with these two people. He said, if you keep having the same conversations with the same people year after year, your energy is going to stagnate. Your ideas are going to get stale, and your momentum is going to get stuck. And then we're back on that plateau again.
Yeah, kind of like that whole story that we went over about us, where we just went stagnant for no reason at all. I mean, just like he says.
And it lasted with us for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
Like, Sebastian did get on his. But, like, we were stagnant in our relationship because I wasn't fulfilling what I wanted, and I was unhappy, and it was really difficult. So he got back on his horse, however you want to say it, faster than I did. But once he did, he was able to pull me on mine as well. And with that little bit of kick and encouragement, we were able to get back and going for the last year and a half. I can't say we've stopped pushing or striving for a moment. We are between moving around from state to state and working and traveling, like, we are always doing something.
Yeah, and for the people wondering, like, how could you possibly just get out of that, like, the rut kind of thing, I guess, if you want to call it that. I mean, honestly, it's all about just finding self-motivation, communicating, and honestly, everything that's talked about in this book, just apply it to your life.
Doing activities, eating healthy, like, but that's part of it. I started working out more consistently and regularly and getting really into it and feeling good about myself and wanting to create and feeling inspiration because I'm getting that dopamine into my brain.
Yeah.
So that's all he's trying to say. Like, when you meet new people and introduce new people into your life, it gives you a new way and new opportunities and new conversations and new knowledge. And he says your time is never wasted when you're gathering information.
Yeah.
And that's so true.
It really is. I mean, it occupies your mind, and your mind is really happy to learn new things. It's like excited, like Yay! I finally get to learn something.
Just pause. Oh, with the space bar. Okay.
Nova,
Nova,
stop. Lay down.
lay down. This stupid bitch ruined our
Alright, it's okay,
recording.
it's okay.
Don't start yet.
Okay. Fuck, where were we?
I don't know, that's why.
Man.
Your time's never wasted when you're gathering information. So next we're gonna go, you can start here. I love talking to anyone who could provide me with new information that can change my perspective.
Are you gonna say that?
No, I'd say you can start there because you don't have to, but it was just your line. So
I love talking to anyone who can provide me with new information.
Oh, I guess I could do it because it goes right into the story that I want to talk about.
Okay. So.
I want to see how much of this is Mike Pence. Oh, okay, perfect.
Okay.
Oh, I can get through these 2 pages fast, honestly.
Cool. Because we're already at basically 46. Okay, let's do this. And go.
So in gathering new information, he says he loves talking to anyone who can provide me with new information that can change my perspective. I was talking with a friend about the news that Vice President Pence said he wouldn't meet a woman for dinner without having his wife present. It really upset his friend, like a lot. He was actually super offended because he said, 50 Cent, I have 2 daughters. Let's say that one of them wants to get into politics. Now she has a chance to meet with the vice president for dinner, and his office tells her that to meet with the vice president, his wife has to come along or she can't get the meeting. That's not fair. And 50 Cent said, why not? He's just trying to stay focused. He's aware of his imperfections. We should celebrate that, not attack the man for that. And his friend was like, no, he deserves to be criticized. He's going to that dinner as the vice president, not as a man. So when he says he can't meet my daughter without his wife present, that means he's looking at her as a sexual object, not a lobbyist, a policy expert, or a senator, or whatever she might be. He's seeing her as a sex object first and foremost. And that really changed something for 50 Cent because he didn't think about that because he was relating to Mike Pence as a single man, and Mike Pence isn't even a single man. So he was looking at him, he's like, oh, he's just trying to keep his urges under check. His urges should be under check if it's a professional meeting from the get-go. And from that moment, that really changed something for him because his friend said, I don't want my daughter to be penalized for being female. Fuck that. And he said, oh shit, how didn't I see that? My vision was limited because I had been identifying with Pence as a single man, and I had failed to identify with the woman in the situation and with how she was losing out despite the fact that she didn't do anything wrong. So that's a really powerful moment, and 50 Cent was totally on the wrong side, and as soon as he learned the new perspective, he was like, wow, I never thought about it. I don't have a daughter that is my whole world that I am looking out for.
Yeah.
So he says, always challenge yourself to be around people who might be informed in different ways than you are, who have had different experiences, and most important, aren't intimidated to share that information with you. Those are the people who are going to supercharge your evolution into your best self. And that's the end of chapter 5. So, chapter 6 is the power of perception.
Yay.
Here he quotes Beyonce. The world will see you the way you see you, and treat you the way you treat yourself.
I love that quote so much.
Dude, I treat myself like a queen, and the world better see that too. For real. Like, self-love is so important. And there was a long time where I didn't have it. I did not have self-love. I was not leaving my house even. People walked all over me. I was depressed. And as soon as I started to see my own self-worth and, like, work towards a goal and work towards being better and started loving myself more, I am happy all the time, and I meet people and people treat me differently than they did before. They're nicer, they're more excited to talk to me, they enjoy my company more because they can tell I'm confident in who I am, and it makes them comfortable to be around me because it feels so honest. And it's just really hard to do that for some people, and I get that because it used to be hard for me. So I love that he brings that up because the power of perception is everything, and quoting Beyonce is too.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like that quote. I'll be the first one to say I have a giant problem with like self-love. There's a lot of of times where I don't give myself enough self love, to be honest. So like really, I mean, it really happens to everybody. Sometimes it happens. It is what it is.
Yeah.
It's all about just getting out of that rut. Just like really believing in yourself, giving yourself enough love, and just kind of just knowing that you're you. You can do whatever you put your mind into, and
just keep pushing forward.
yeah, keep on.
And in that you can find your self love and you can create this perception of yourself. And that's what he's saying. And so then he goes on to talk about how he is two different personalities. He's 50 Cent and he's Curtis Jackson. And that fuels the power of his perception, because when he used to go into record deals and record labels and different business places, people would react to him as a rapper and they would be really afraid of him. And then he would show up and he learned to finesse his way to dress nicely and talk softly and be humble and not aggressive, and people look at him a whole new way. All of a sudden he's no longer 50 Cent. Now he's Curtis Jackson. And he's trying to show people that, and his whole point is 50 Cent is just the perception, but Curtis Jackson is the whole reality. 50 Cent is fake. 90% of the things he's rapped about he has lived, but that doesn't mean that 50 Cent is him. And he used that to his advantage. He used 50 Cent, the persona I earned the hard way, to my advantage to both protect and elevate Curtis Jackson. So he used the different sides of his personality to raise himself higher. Or not necessarily his personality, but his roles. He says, but you don't need to try to be the next 50 Cent either. That should never be your goal. Again, you gotta be you. That's the whole point. He says, being me is not going to fit your journey, and neither is trying to be anyone else. When you pattern yourself too closely after another person, you're putting weak, ineffectual energy out into the world. Imagine your energy as being like water. For thousands of years, people have sought to channel the energy of water. Ancient Greeks built water wheels that used powers of rivers to grind wheat into flour. Ancient China used pot wheels to lift water out of rivers. Islamic engineers in Africa and the Middle East used it to power lifting machines. In modern times, we built colossal projects like the Hoover Dam. Now, all of that was water, and none of those measures, which brought so much change to civilization, also altered the basic nature of the water involved. The only way they changed is how it was utilized. You are water. You're wet, you're water. You just gotta be water. You can't try to be anything else. You just have to figure out how being you fits into a thing that works for you. You just have to figure out how to use yourself, your potential. And that is a really cool analogy.
Yeah, it really is, and I like that. And I like it a lot because another human being that really like being like water was Bruce Lee.
Oh, yeah, Bruce Lee was super watery.
He was very adamant about it, and honestly, he didn't really become very good at what he did in the martial arts until he like finally sat down one day and actually figured out that I guess he was at a beach and he was like just looking at how the water and the waves would just hit the sand and just kind of like confirm to like what he had to do, because water just kind of like adapts to where it is. So he was like, you know what, that's the key, just be like water. I mean, just become what it is and go with the flow,
adapt
be who you
and
are.
move.
Yeah, exactly.
And he was very successful with that technique as well. So that's what he's saying. You just figure out how to flow with what's going on and use your own energy and your own creativity to propel yourself forward. And another way to propel yourself forward, he says, is projecting the right appearance. He brings up when he went on tour after Get Rich or Die Trying, his album cover was him shirtless, ripped, with gold chains, and then they went on a huge super mega world tour. And then it was time for The Massacre to come out because he had already recorded it before he went on tour. And he had lost the definition, and he considered himself flabby, actually. And he was like, well, how do I fix this? Because he did not want to release his album and the headlines all be like, 50 Cent got fat. So he took in a pencil, and he actually drew in definition on himself, and then he edited the picture to look very cartoony so that it would look like it was still him and that the whole thing was just drawn in. And he used that so that nobody brought it up. And that's really smart. Another way he uses perception is back in the day when he was still just drug dealing and hustling and trying to get on the rapper scene. He made sure that he had a nice car. He had a 400 SE Benz, and he drove it to the flyest club in Manhattan that they didn't even know how they were going to get in, by the way. They had no idea. They were just like, we're going to get in there somehow. And he was driving past slow, and some guy came and slaps on the hood of his car. And 50 Cent doesn't take that very well at first. He gets really mad, like, in his face. And apparently the guy noticed, and he goes, "Yo, my bad, son. I thought you were my man Kenny. He's got the same whip." And he says, once my alarm subsided, I took a good look at who was talking to me. And it was Jam Master Jay from Run DMC, one of my heroes. And after that, he basically gets out of his car, and he's like, "We're going in with you." He just says it. He's like, "We're going in with you, man." And he looks at them, he looks at the ride, he looks back, and he goes, "No, okay, you can come with me." And he says from there, Jam Master Jay literally walked him into the music business. He was not going to get in there otherwise. And he said if he had pulled up in a hoopty, then Jam Master Jay wouldn't have mistaken him for Kenny, the NBA star. He would have just, like, not pay attention. If some guy in a hoopty gets out and looks at Jam Master Jay and goes, "I'm coming in with you," he would have been like, "Yo, get out of here."
Yeah.
What? No, go away. So 50 got lucky, like, because he presented himself as someone who is deserving of the attention and being walked in just by having a different ride. So he says it's incumbent on you to accept that you control how you're perceived and to prepare the best presentation possible. And so that's a whole thing I deal with a lot, actually, because I'm a wild person. I dye my hair crazy colors. I dress weird. I sometimes am scantily clothed. And I have to present myself in a way that is positive as well, because I'm also happy and bubbly and excited, but I am not bashful, and I'm not going to be afraid to be myself. I also live in Florida, and it's like hot as balls. So I'm sorry, you might see my butt cheeks when I wear shorts. But I have to create this I also have to find a way to take that appearance and that energy and bring it in a positive light, not something negative. And I think I'm pretty good at it, because I'm not out here, like, strutting in thong bikinis or anything. I'm just saying that, like, I might wear a little less clothing, but I also try to make myself presentable in a way that people don't take my outfits necessarily and judge me completely on them, because I make sure I look nice. You know, I'm done up. My hair looks good. If my hair's blue, it's not faded blue usually. It's like a nice blue. So just giving, like, looking the way you want to be perceived is everything. Because I also use my clothing so that when you see me, you know, and be like, "Hey, I'm a wild card." Like, just be aware of that. Don't think that you won't meet me, see my clothes, and be like, "Oh yeah, this girl probably sits home and just, like, reads a book and, like, doesn't do anything else. She's just, like, a chill girl." Like, no, I want you to look at me and think I'm a wild person, even though I do just sit at home and read a book and I'm just a chill girl. But I want you to think otherwise. I want to be exciting. So that's pretty much what I got out of that. He says then he goes into different ways that you can use the power of perception by controlling the conversation. And he had found a really smart way to control conversations. He's found out that when he's talking to someone, if he uses this tactic in the right way, it always goes into his favor, and it is he'll touch the arm of the person he's talking to. But there are rules about it. You have to touch them between their wrist and their elbow. It has to be forearm. It has to be a light touch. It can't be aggressive. You can't have to reach over a person or a table. It has to come off natural. It just has to be, we have to be talking like this, and you just, like, keep talking for a second, and then you just pull away. Just a light little, "Hey, what's up?"
Yeah, absolutely. It's basically like, "Hey, did you notice that?"
I didn't notice that, and just that little touch does something for you. There's actually studies by scientists that prove that a light touch makes people more agreeable to your requests. A study by Society for Personality and Social Psychology found that waiters and waitresses who applied light touches to the people they were serving got better tips than those who did not. However, I was a server for a very long time, and I will not touch my customers. I won't do it. That's scary. I don't know. That's a risky
It is a
choice.
risky move, but again, just like 50 says, just know how to read the energy. So know how to read the energy of your table. If you have a table that is very like focused on doing business and it's lunchtime and they're just there focused on each other, no,
Don't touch them.
do not leave them alone. But if it's a family that is trying to figure out like where to go and they want to know more about you and they're just trying to have fun, I mean, you basically start joking around with them and you get comfortable with them, and every once in a while, like I don't know, you might be talking about like, hey, maybe you should go to check out this restaurant. This place is really nice, and somehow one way or the other, you basically
against the rules.
You're
no
right.
shoulders.
No shoulders.
You can only touch between the wrist and the elbow. That's what I'm saying. As a server, I'm not gonna be able to just casually be like, pet your arm. Hi.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know how to employ that. But then they go on to another study that says applying a light touch made random people on the street more likely to help with finding lost objects and even signing petitions. Because when someone touches you in the right way, it causes your body to release chemicals like dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and these are all things that make your brain happy. However, touching them in other places, which would be triggered by these things would be triggered by an aggressive touch, would cause levels of stressful chemicals like cortisol to go down. So one simple touch can put someone in a more relaxed mood where they're more likely to agree with whatever's being proposed. If you apply the touch properly, it'll work. But you can't, and then he stresses again, you can't touch anyone other than between their elbow and their wrist. It is especially true if you're a man interacting with a woman. It is especially true if you are a man interacting with a woman. I just want to stress that.
I think the
point.
whole shoulder thing, I would do it more to like an older gentleman.
Yeah, like a good old boy, like, oh yes sir, but yeah.
Or like, hey, funny joke, man.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
But otherwise, it's kind of risky.
Yeah, it really is.
The next header brings us to is act like you don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going into a situation, suppose you're going into an interview for a job you really want. You sit down for your interview, and in your ironed outfit, of course, he brings that back up, iron your clothes, your instinct will be to express just how enthusiastic you are about the position. Don't succumb to that instinct. Do, however, express in no uncertain terms that you're interested in the job. Even if you are to accept it, you are confident that you could not only meet but exceed expectations for the position. But do not ever give them the impression that you need that job or that you're dying for it, even if that's exactly what you're feeling, because it'll come across as desperation. And you don't want to seem desperate. So if you act like you don't need it, it's a lot easier. And he even brings it back to hustling. Like, he says if your friend comes up to you and asks you for money, okay, you're probably not going to give him money. Like, I'm not going to give you money. But if you're sitting around at a bar talking about how you like your life to an old friend, and then you're like, yeah, I've got some things going on. They're going pretty well. You know, some of my stuff involves like real estate. Just keep it vague, and slowly they'll want to know more. And he's like, all right, now buy your friend a drink. Right? You bought your friend a drink, a nice drink, top shelf. Buy 2 drinks, one for you, one for him. And then by the end, he'll be like, what are you doing? You'll be like, well, I've got this project, and be very vague about your project, right? And then if you get to a point where he's like, wants to be in, he's like, oh, well, tell me, like, can I get in? Like, can I put some money in? He's like, nah, man, you can't. I can't for you, sorry. And get to a point where he really wants it, and then be like, all right, fine, you can invest, but I can't let you put more than $10,000 in, right? That guy just got conned out of $10,000 because he acted like he didn't want him to give him money, but really he was trying to steal $10,000. He's not telling you to rob people.
No, not at all.
He's just telling you, like, acting like you don't need it is a great tool to have in your belt.
Mm-hmm.
His next header, he goes on to talk about what he's attracted to. And I learned news. Did you guys know that 50 Cent, aka Curtis Jackson, dated Chelsea Handler, the comedian? Because that blew my mind. I had no idea they had a relationship. And he was really into her. Like, so he says Chelsea Handler, people are always confused when they find out I was in a relationship with the comedian Chelsea Handler. I guess we seemed like an odd couple. I didn't care what anyone else thought. Chelsea and I met on her show, and right afterwards, I sent her 50 white roses, and I called her office to speak to her, and at first she didn't hit me back, but eventually she did, and they started hanging out and meeting whenever they were both in LA, and he even made plans to go on vacation with her family. and her. Of course, she was going to be there too. And he said, we had fun times when we were together, but what I was really attracted to was how she moved professionally. Because she was always hustling. She's working on her TV show, and then she's on her talk show, and then she's writing her books, and she's on a book tour, and she's constantly propelled forward. And because of that, he was so attracted to her because she didn't need him. She was spending her time with him because she wanted to, not because she needed to or needed anything from him. She needed nothing. She's fine. She's Chelsea Handler. But she just wanted to be around him, and he really liked that. And it didn't end up working out for them, but he said, I still think she's amazing. She's achieved so much success, and what makes it even more impressive is that she's done it on her own terms. And the older he gets, the more he realizes, I do want to start a family. I do want to have a settled down life and someone I can look onto. But when he looks at marriage, it scares him because he says taking care of a woman is not a bad concept. But taking care of a woman who has to be taken care of is a terrible concept. So, like, he doesn't want to ever get stuck with someone who needs him in every way. He's their everything. Like, no, you've got to bring something to the table. You got to have some ambition. You got to want something. And Chelsea Handler, for him, wanted something. Like, I'm really sad that they broke up now that I know that they were together, because the way he talks about it, I'm like, dang, you were, like, really into Chelsea Handler. And I'm like, I want to see what that was like. I wish I had known about that when it was happening, because I feel like they'd have been a funny couple. I feel like the jokes would have been never ended. And ridiculously inappropriate.
Probably.
So we're going to round out this episode with the end of this last part. He's just talking about being yourself. Like, at the end of the day, you're going to control your own perception. You're going to choose what clothes you wear. You're going to be what you want. You're going to look how you want to look. But when it comes straight out to it, don't put on a show. Just be who you are. And he says, as long as I'm always myself, no one can beat me at that. As long as you're comfortable walking your truth, no one will ever beat you at being you either.
Yeah, and I really like that. And one way that we can apply that to ourselves, or we're trying to apply that to ourselves, is to try to keep this podcast very authentic, very real, very us. Like, we try to not hide as many things as we possibly can. Like, we just want to be honest with you guys. We try to tell you stories of the mistakes we've done, of how we fix those, and you're gonna learn more about us. So, like, that's what we're trying to do here.
And just because we're, like, preaching, like, we want you to read more, we want you to be better, and you can do all these things, and we're telling you all the things to do to make yourself better, we're not telling you those things. We're reading this book with you, and we're hearing those things, and we're trying to apply them to our lives too. And that's why we keep telling you our stories, because we are not perfect. We are very imperfect, and that's what's so great about us. And that's why we've learned so much, is because we're so comfortable in being ourselves, and putting it on screen is just another way to solidify our comfortability in ourselves. Especially for you. Sebastian has never been on camera before we started doing this.
Yeah, this to me itself is very scary.
And I live for it, but, like, that's a whole nother thing, and you have gotten better every episode at talking.
Yeah, and whenever we say, like, guys, do these things, or, like, be a better human being, on this and that, like, we're not only talking to yourselves, like, we're literally talking to us too.
Like, we want to be better people.
Yeah, like, we want to make positive energy go all around, so that way it hits us, it hits you, it hits anybody that's able to receive that energy.
Yeah, we just want to put some also more good vibes into the world. We just want everyone to be happy and knowledgeable and striving to be their best, so that we can all thrive together.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what it's all about.
So next week we're going to read chapters 7 and 8. We're really getting close to the end, guys. Like, this is 4 weeks down. I think we only have 2 episodes left of this book. Because after after episode 8, there's only episode 9 and his acknowledgments, and then we'll talk about our next book, which we have not decided on yet. We're going to figure that out. If you have any suggestions, you can put it in the comments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Comment and like and subscribe. Yeah. Comment and like and subscribe. Comment and like and subscribe.
Alright, guys, thank you so much for paying attention again to us and watching our podcast.
We appreciate everything and every one of you, and we hope you have a great week. We'll see you next week.
See you guys.
Bye.